Hey friends, I'm making another video. I have been talking to a lot of friends who are job hunting and putting in applications different places, and I know that that's a really stressful time, and I myself have been on the other side of the scenario recently where as a hiring manager, I've been looking over applications and resumes and conducting interviews to fill a spot on my team at work. Over the years, I've picked up a lot of tips on applications and resumes and writing cover letters and interviewing. And I thought that I would share some of my tips, some of the tricks that I use. Everything I'm going to tell you today, I have done. So if it sounds like I have done the most, it's because I've done the most. I believe in really giving it your all to apply for a job that you want. I believe in quality over quantity. These days in particular, I think it's harder than ever to rise to the top of an application pool. Compared to when I was first starting out in the working world when I was 16 years old, things have changed because of the internet and especially now with COVID. Even for retail jobs or restaurant jobs, you aren't as likely to turn in a paper application these days. And so you're not necessarily getting that face time of handing in your application that was my experience when I was first entering the working world when I was 16, when I was working in restaurants and in retail. And it can be really disheartening to put in a bunch of applications, to spend a lot of time making a resume, writing a cover letter, and getting no feedback, not even rejection letters. Some of us would love a rejection email because then at least you know that you can cross that off your list, that you're not going to hear back from them. And a lot of places aren't doing that at all. So I thought that maybe some of my tips would be helpful to you who are job hunting or will be job hunting in the future. Maybe it's just good to know, or maybe you're just kind of nosy and you want to know how I do what I do, and that's okay too. So my very first tip is to make different versions of your resume that highlight different skills. And depending on your experience and your skill set, maybe that means you're going to make two different resumes. Maybe that means you're going to make three or more if you have a really wide range of skill sets. And the reason I suggest doing this is because if you're applying to different jobs that are looking for different skill sets, it'll be easier to tailor your resume. So for example, with me, I have in my past experience, I have retail experience, restaurant experience, nonprofit experience, marketing experience, and then my education was focused on public policy and economics in school. So depending on where I'm applying, I may or may not want to talk about one or all of those different things. It just depends. If I'm looking for a marketing job, obviously I want to highlight my marketing experience. If I'm looking for a policy related job, then I want to highlight my education and my editorial experience. If I wanted to get back into customer service, then I would talk more about my retail experience and my restaurant experience. So I think you can see why having a different version of your resume tailored to a different kind of job would be helpful. Tip number 2. Write a good cover letter. The cover letter is like the opening statement in a trial. This is your opportunity to get the person that you're talking to on your side, to really sway them. And especially if it's a writing job, your cover letter should be good. Punctuation is correct, no typos, no misspelled words. With tools like Grammarly these days, there's really no excuse, in my opinion. In my case, for my cover letter, I kind of break it down into 3 parts. 1, I talk about my skills, my education. 2, I talk about my natural talents. These are my specific kinds of character strengths, whether that's being a good macro thinker, being strategic, having a warm heart for people, having good people skills, a high emotional intelligence. And then the 3rd part of my cover letter, I'm talking about what I'm passionate about, i.e., what the organization I'm applying to is passionate about is now my passion, and I'm really going to make sure that I let that come through in my cover letter. This is always my final paragraph before signing off sincerely, to let the hiring manager know that what they care about is also what I care about. I think it's important for me in my work that I find that what I'm doing is meaningful. And so for the most part, I'm probably not going to be applying for jobs that I have no connection to. So just to recap, the 3 parts of the cover letter that I'm writing is 1, talking about my talents and skills, 2, talking about my specific characteristics and my character strengths, and 3, talking about my passion and my mission, and aligning that passion and mission with the organization. The last thing I will say about cover letters is that if it's at all possible for you to locate the name of the hiring manager or the supervisor for the position, do a little internet search, put on your sleuthing cap and your monocle and try to find that person. Maybe you're stalking them on LinkedIn or Facebook, or you're going to the staff page of that website. Maybe you are doing a bit of deductive reasoning to think, well, if this is a marketing position, then maybe I'm addressing the marketing director or the marketing manager. Even if you get the name wrong, it at least shows that you took the time to try to find out, that you were doing research, that you are familiar enough with the company in the website maybe that you could figure this out. This isn't always going to be possible. Sometimes it's not clear, but I will tell you, the position that I've recently been hiring for, I was very easy to find online, and only 2 out of 40 applications took that 3 minutes to Google marketing manager for my organization and find my name. Both of those people got interviews. Tip number 4, take the job description for the job that you're applying for, take their keywords, use the words that they use to describe the job and the qualifications they're looking for, and make sure that those words are present in your cover letter and in your resume. Hiring managers are not spending 10 minutes per application reading every single word you write. If they're reading it at all, they're skimming, and a lot of people aren't going to even skim. They're just going to hit Control F, pull up the find function on their computer, and look for the keywords they're looking for. For example, as a hiring manager recently, I'm looking for somebody who's going to manage social media. So as I'm going through applications, I'm hitting Control F, social. And if they don't have social media experience, maybe I'm not even reading their whole resume. Probably not. So sidebar, in talking about resumes, one of the main things that I'm looking at in a resume as a hiring manager is length of time spent at each job. So if you have a short stint at a job, try to make it clear why it was short in your resume. If it was an internship, make sure it's clear that it was an internship. If it was a seasonal position, make sure it's clear that that was a seasonal position, so the hiring manager isn't wondering, well, how come they only lasted a couple months in this job? Why couldn't they make it work for a year or more? And if that's a constant throughout your resume, then think about how you're going to explain that possibly, and also think about maybe spending a bit longer time in your next job, because although hiring managers these days aren't expecting you to spend 5-10 years in a single job, it can be expensive to look for and hire new employees. So if a hiring manager sees that you have a history of only staying for a short period of time in a job, they're probably going to assume that the same is going to be true for the position they are hiring you for. Sticking to the topic of a resume, if you are just not sure at all what to write in your resume, take a little time throughout your work week and write down every single thing you do. Everything you do. Keep a little notepad by your desk or in your pocket if you're not working from a desk, and write down if you're waiting tables and you're taking care of 40 guests a day. Make a little note of that. How many people did you serve? What were your sales that day? What were your sales that week? Make a little note of that. This is all stuff that can go into your resume. Also, think back to previous projects that you've worked on. If your work has shifted a lot over time, then think back to when you very first started. What were the projects that you were working on? What were the skills you were using? What were the results of that project? Especially if that project was confined to a specific period of time, then you should be able to speak about what was the result of that project? What was the impact that made for your organization? Also in your resume, don't be afraid to use numbers. There should be qualitative as well as quantitative information about the work that you do. As I mentioned, if you're in the restaurant industry or in sales, speak about your sales numbers. Speak about the number of customers that you're interacting with on a daily basis. If you're working in a nonprofit organization, how many donors were you interacting with? How many people were on the receiving end of the services of that nonprofit? If you're a writer, how many articles did you write? How many papers were you editing? Make sure that you're including numbers in your resume, because it's a really quick way to convince people that you are a great employee and that you are results driven. Tip number 5, write a thank you letter after you interview. I thought that this was really common knowledge, but then I made a post on my social media about this recently, and I had friends popping out of the woodworks who had no clue, who had no idea that writing a thank you letter is expected by the hiring manager, and it really is. And I would even encourage people to send it quickly, because you don't know what kind of time frame the hiring manager is working on. If they're trying to hire somebody quickly and fill that position and you're delaying, then your delay might cost you the job. Tip number 6, beef up your skills quickly. This is a trick that I've used, and it works really easily, especially in the sphere I'm in, which is marketing, because there's so many software platforms, software as a service platforms that we use in marketing, whether it's a customer management software or a platform to schedule social media, platforms like Monday or Asana that are meant to help teams work together. If the place you're applying for has stated in their job description that you'll be using that software in your job, take 10 minutes, go do a demo with that software, take a little time, do a free sign up, get a little bit of experience. Even a little bit of experience counts. And then you can speak to your experience with that platform. You can put that as a beginner skill level if you want to. Or if you're ticking a box on an application that you have experience with that platform, that 5-10 minutes that you spent absolutely counts. And especially if you dig into the software a little bit and you see like, oh, this is really easy to use and integrate into my work life, then great. That might make the difference between somebody else who has the same skills and education that you do, but doesn't maybe have experience with that piece of software. So like I said, do a demo, do a free trial, make a free WordPress website, watch a YouTube video, see if there's a free certification you can get, especially if you're finding that this specific skill or experience with a specific platform is popping up a lot in your job hunt. Then this is probably standard for the industry, and you want to make sure that you have at least minimal exposure to that platform. Tip number 7, what in the world are you gonna write when they ask you for your required salary? My advice here is to do some research. Check out PayScale and Glassdoor, look for a range, see what other people in your city, in your industry are earning. And I like to shoot for the high end of that range myself, because I think that it's up to each individual to really go get their money and to sell their labor at the appropriate price. Because nobody can really pay you what you're worth, but they can try. Am I right? So if you don't feel comfortable asking for a specific number, give a range. And in fact, I would say it's probably preferable to give a range even than to give a specific number. If you are absolutely torn and you don't feel comfortable giving a wide range, and if you're not locked into writing a number on the application, write the word negotiable. And hopefully you are negotiable in what you're willing to accept as far as compensation, or maybe making up the difference with vacation time and things like that. Tip number 8, provide evidence that wasn't asked for. Make up a test, give them evidence of what you would be doing on the job. If this is a writing job, provide a writing sample. Make a portfolio. If you're a creative person, put some graphics that you've made in your portfolio. If you've made a video, provide a link to that. Be willing to show what isn't asked for, possibly. Tip number 9, and this is the most important tip to me, which is to send in your application and don't take too long. As I said earlier, you don't know what kind of time frame your hiring manager is looking at to get this position filled. If they maybe right out of the gates, they got some really good candidates and they're scheduling interviews and they're ready to move forward. So do as good of a job as you can on your application, your cover letter, and your resume. As I said before, I believe in quality over quantity, but get your resume in, because timing is everything, as we know in life, and you don't want to miss out on maybe your dream job because you were too anxious about writing the cover letter, you were too nervous to send in the application, you were feeling intimidated. You got to get over that. You got to plow forward and just do it. Tip number 10, ask great questions during your interview. By this point, hopefully you've done it. You followed all my other tips about writing your cover letter and putting keywords in your resume, and you've done the most important thing of all, which is sending in your application. And now you have landed an interview. Congratulations. But your work isn't over. Obviously now push comes to shove and you really need to put up or shut up. And one of the best ways to demonstrate to an employer that you're going to be a great fit for that job is that you're asking really insightful questions. And this can be a tough one. This is maybe even the most dreaded part of the interview, is the very end where the interviewer has asked you all the questions that they want to ask, and they turn it over to you and say, "What questions do you have for us about this job?" You better have some questions. If you don't have questions, that is a really big indicator to the hiring manager that you're not really interested, that you're not really thinking about the brass tacks of doing this job. So let me tell you some questions that I always ask in an interview, and I think that you can borrow these as well. I always ask about the culture. I like to ask the hiring manager what the style of the supervisor is. What is the atmosphere in terms of independent work versus collaborative work? What does the office environment actually look like? These days we're doing Zoom interviews. A lot of us are working remote and maybe not expecting to go into an office ever. And eventually maybe that would be down the road after the pandemic has cleared up. So get the lowdown on what that looks like. Does that mean that you're having weekly team phone calls? Are you having daily stand-up meetings? If you're actually going to be in an office environment, what does that office look like? Is it an open cubicle environment? Is everybody segregated into offices? What does that look like? And then think about how that matches your style, if that's something that you're comfortable with. And especially if that does line up, don't be afraid to respond to their answer to your question with an affirmative that, "Oh, wonderful, that works perfectly with my style. I can really see that working well with me and the way that I like to conduct my work." I always ask the hiring manager what the skills and characteristics they most value in a potential hire are. This is really a good opportunity for you to emphasize, "Oh, gee, well, you just said that you were looking for X, Y, and Z skills. And it just so happens that I really have those skills and I'm good at them." So this is just a way to reinforce what you've already been talking about in your interview, and it also shows confidence in your skills and ability to do that job. Or on the flip side, maybe you are falling a little bit short on those skills and characteristics that they're looking for. This is then your opportunity to let them know that you are ready and willing to beef up those skills, that you are ready to do some on-the-job learning or even maybe a little learning outside of work hours to reach the place where your competition is. I always ask about the roles, challenges, and opportunities, especially set within a time frame. I would ask a hiring manager within the first 100 days of me being on the job, what challenges and opportunities am I going to face at the end of these 100 days? What are your expectations that you would like to see in the performance of this job? And then, like I said a moment ago, based on their answer, reinforce your ability to execute, reinforce your ability to meet those challenges, and to go above and beyond with those opportunities. So those are my top 10 tips for getting a job, for putting in an application, for doing a good resume and cover letter, and landing an interview. There are a lot of videos and articles on the internet with other tips that you can apply. So I would encourage you to not stop here with this video. Go check out some other resources. There's plenty of other tips on what to wear during an interview, other things that you might want to do to show off your resume and cover letter to the best advantage. Maybe you want to invest in a professionally designed resume that will really set you apart. But good luck out there, and let me know if you have any questions. Put them in the comments. And if you have other suggestions that would be helpful to people watching this video, to other job hunters, please let everybody know. And good luck out there. You're gonna do great. Guess who's back? Back again. Marianne's back. Tell a friend. Okay. Now that I got that out of my system. Well, I'm wearing a blazer and I'm wearing my glasses, so this is a professional video.